Vikings champagne problem. And this is a interesting one to me because I think people have gotten really used to talking about Sam Darnold a certain way. I think it's been very difficult for him to live down his draft position, his first few years in the league, the way things went with the Jets, the way things went with the Panthers. And I think the time has come now for us to change the narrative on Sam Darnold the same way over the last couple of years the narrative has changed on Baker Mayfield. He is now 11-2 as the Vikings starter. In 11 of his 13 games this year, he has had a 100 or better passer rating. That's a triple-digit passer rating. That's a franchise record. His passer rating on Sunday was 157.9. That's a Vikings record. And he has flourished under Kevin O'Connell. You see him taking the lessons that he learned from failing with the Jets, from failing with the Panthers, from sitting behind Brock Purdy last year in San Francisco. And I think really, what the success of guys like Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold show us is how the environment that a quarterback comes into is very important, both when he's coming into the league and maybe when he's trying to reprise his career if he didn't have a great situation coming into the league. And you look at a lot of the guys who have been successful from the jump. A lot of them went into advantageous situations right away. I'm not saying that Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes wouldn't have made it anyway, but those guys all walked onto playoff teams. Those guys went into established situations. Those guys were the centerpiece of builds that had a lot of other pieces around them. And I think the advantage those guys had was massive coming into the league. Doesn't mean, again, that they wouldn't have made it anyway, but those guys had an advantage over guys like Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, who, before they were a couple of years into the league, wound up going through coach firings, wound up going through GM firings, just a very, very different thing. And so, I think that there's that piece of it that's important here is that, a lot of times a quarterback fails. It might not even be 50% his fault. It might be a lot of it might be the environment around him. And I think that was the case for Sam Darnold early in his career. So that brings us to the Vikings champagne problem, which is Sam Darnold's a free agent after this year. They've got J.J. McCarthy, who's very talented, who was ahead of schedule back in August when he hurt his knee. He's going to be coming off of 2 knee surgeries in 2025. And so how do you handle this if you're the Vikings? It's an intriguing question. I asked around to different people around the league about his worth on the open market. I had one high-ranking personnel guy say that he thought he'd get a deal in the range of $110 million over 3 years. That's almost $40 million a year. I had somebody else say that he thought he'd be commanding around $40 million a year on the open market. We'll see. And then I had a couple other people say that they feel like the Vikings should tag him. And the Vikings should delay J.J. McCarthy for another year because he's coming off an injury, because you've got a team that can win right now. And I'm still on the fence. I think without knowing what J.J. McCarthy was going to look like in September and October and November, if he had a healthy rookie year, it's hard to make the decision to walk away from somebody who is and has been as impressive as Sam Darnold has been. And we're seeing the reasons why he was the 3rd overall pick in the first place in the way that he's playing. And so, the more I've thought about this, and I was very much Kevin O'Connell's shown he can do it. You let Sam Darnold go. You hate to see him go because he's done so much good for you. And you just you trust in your system and your program to develop J.J. McCarthy and get J.J. McCarthy up to a spot where he's going to be able to play really well in his second year. Now you've played so well and Sam Darnold's played so well that I almost feel like the idea of tagging him and delaying it for another year is the right way to go. So that's a big decision to come. They don't need to worry about that right now. They're still just a game behind the Lions. If they can keep winning, could set up a monster showdown in Week 18 against the Lions that could wind up being for the NFC North title. So a lot of great stuff in front of the Vikings. But on the other end of all of that will come a pretty big decision at the quarterback position. And it's a great credit to Sam Darnold that this one is setting up to be a very difficult decision for the Vikings, because before this year, the idea was Sam Darnold would hold the fort for a year, and then we'll go with J.J. McCarthy in 2025.